Welcome back to another episode of the Kings Pulse podcast presented by the Kings Herald, live from Golden One Center after the Sacramento Kings beat the Houston Rockets for game 41 of the season with Chris Watkins of Sacktown Sports 1140. What's going on, Chris? How you doing, man?
Doing well, man. You know, this is 3 straight wins for the Kings, 3 straight 20-point wins for the Kings. Big blowouts here in Golden One Center, and starting 5 games over 500 for the first time since 2006, if I'm not mistaken. And vibes are pretty good right now. All things considered, we saw some fisticuffs.
We did see some
today.
shit. We saw,
but besides that, vibes are all good. No complaints.
Absolutely. Doing something a little different. This is the plan. We're doing these post games a little more often. The plan is to kind of do these pretty consistently, but I finally got the right cord needed. Yes. Now we're able to go live. So live on YouTube, anybody in the chat will definitely be interacting, and anybody listening to audio, just know to look for these after games. That's the plan, specifically home games.
Yes.
Road games, probably not so much.
Right.
But yeah, that's kind of the plan here. So let's just start with kind of takeaways from these last 2 games. What's up, Mr. Ham?
They don't know what they're talking about at all.
This is true. Big takeaways from today's game?
Well, I already wrote 7 of them. I think the biggest takeaway is how lonely Matt George looks on the court right now. Matt George is down there by himself. Now he's looking up. He looks very lonely.
Can we turn this camera on him? Hold on. Let's see.
We definitely can.
Wait. Look at that.
The lone
you see
gunman.
that? Wow.
I think Matt George is trying to join 50 Cent and Raj Bethal and 47 other people who tried to light the beam tonight with Keegan Murray. That was one of my first takeaways, is how many people tried to light the beam tonight. I thought that was inappropriate. Should be one man lighting the beam, and it probably should have been Domantas Sabonis.
Very fair.
Have you ever seen a night like Domas's? What is it? 15, 15, 15, but even more than that.
1916
and Oscar Robertson when he did it. No, I was not here for that.
Rochester.
Yeah, you know what? Like, I keep talking about this. Like, what he does on a nightly basis is so incredible. He's got to be one of the most amazing players I've ever got to cover. You know, I think for the longest time it was DeMarcus Cousins. Just the things that DeMarcus could do on the court just were stunning. Like some of the behavioral stuff was a little unnerving sometimes, but as far as his ability to take off and run the floor at 6'11", like 300 pounds was crazy. And then Rudy Gay was another player that I always looked at, and just when Rudy Gay did, like, he could do special things. Like, there are times where he looked like the Iceman out there. And what we're watching right now with Domas is just next level. I mean, he's just a winner. That's the best way to describe him. He does whatever it takes to win a game, and he's so incredibly good. And it's a joy to watch him on a night in and night out basis.
Last thing I'll ask you, Mr. James Ham, before I let you get out of here and trek through the storm. Now that we're halfway through the season, 23-18, they've reached your 5 games over 500 that everybody's been clamoring for. We know what this team is more so, obviously. I feel like expectations are updated from the beginning of the season. And do you have a new definition of what a successful season is for this team?
You know, I think a lot of people are getting lulled into this trap right now, and they forget that the final 20, 25 games of the season, the game is totally different. Playoff teams really elevate, veteran playoff teams, they elevate their game. Scoring becomes so much more difficult. Everything is more difficult in the final 20, 25 games of the season. And so I don't want to get too high on this team right now. They need to be 8 to 10 games over 500 when they hit that stretch run. They still need to make a couple more additions. They need a backup center that can play heavy minutes, especially if Domas goes down. They need to swing for the fences one more time for a star level player, so this can be a sustainable situation, a 3 to 5 year window here, maybe more. So those are things I'm looking for. Ride the wave while it's good. Light the beam. Take pictures of the beam. I think there's going to be a bunch of babies born and be named Beam. There's going to be a bunch of babies born after Kings game, 10 months night. 40 baby beamers. There we are. 40 weeks after, a lighting of a beam ceremony, we'll have children. But at the same time, like, keep in mind that this team hasn't proven they can do this. They haven't been there before. And eventually they're going to have to prove that they are good. I know, like you and Sean both said, you believe this is a good team. I'm not there yet. I want them to keep proving that they're good. And that means get 8, 10, 12 games over 500 and show me that you're going to be a team that pushes for 48 to 50 wins.
Hopefully that happens. Appreciate you stopping by, James.
Yeah.
Have a safe night home.
Talk trash. Maybe I should go.
There's another live stream
over
happening
here
over there.
with Leo. And
Go down to the court with Matt. Just
I'll
make all the cameos.
All these appearances. Maybe I'll just go find the button and keep lighting the beam and see what happens.
Be the 8th person to light the beam tonight.
See if I get kicked out for shutting the beam off and turning it back on. I don't know, but you guys have fun.
Thanks, man.
Appreciate it. Baby Beamers is fantastic. That's
Baby
fantastic.
Beamers.
That is fantastic.
It was James Ham stopping by. Shout out people in the chat here. Yeah, Chris, I'm gonna ask you the same question, man. I mean, obviously, expectations compared to beginning of the year are different, right? But
completely.
What makes a successful season now?
Yeah, that's a great question. First off, I just want to say that I'm thrilled that the Kings are finally 5 games above 500, so we can stop hearing about it.
That was a real talking point, especially by Mr. James Hammer right there.
Mr. James Ham, he's right there, so I know that he's not listening right now. But yeah, I mean, there was a lot. There has been, and Mike Brown kind of pointed at it in the pregame press conference today. He was like, I don't think anyone in the locker room knows that number, but sure, right. Like, yeah, that is obviously a goal, is to be X amount of games above 500. But to answer your question of where we should be expecting this team to finish this year, it's, with them being kind of firmly in this 4 and 5 spot in the standings, you'd like to think that that's kind of the bar that they need to reach, and anything under that being a play-in appearance, or I guess they could be the 6th seed as well. But if they're a play-in team, for sure we'll take it. We have the 16-year drought, but it's kind of is a disappointment at that point. I mean, the Kings finally getting over this 5 games over 500 hump. While it's not, ultimately significant with the number, it does mean that this team is a winning basketball club, and they should be expecting to finish in that, with a tougher schedule in the first half than in the second half. You'd like to think that there's a chance that this team wins 45 plus games, and you'd like to think that kind of does get you in that 5 seed maybe, and you might not get home court advantage, but it does feel like if this team isn't a playoff team, that is a disappointment. And that's crazy to say, especially considering preseason Vegas over-unders 36.5,
which was always a little ridiculous, to be honest. It might have been 33.
Yeah, that would be crazy. If it's 33, that's crazy. But regardless, I think best case scenario, people were saying 500, maybe sprinkling a couple games over 500. But if you're 41-41, I think a lot of people would have taken that as a success, and making the play-in and having the possibility of the playoffs, I think, to start the season was what people were hoping for. And now that we're in it, we see how good this team is offensively. I think they can clearly take another jump defensively. And if they do, like James mentioned, make that move for we know this team needs a backup center, they can maybe use another backup wing as well. If they can make those moves to add to what this team is and kind of patch up those defensive holes that they have, I don't see why we shouldn't expect a 5 seed or higher. I mean, like, this team has flaws and is still proven to be one of the better teams in the Western Conference. If you address those flaws, you should be a better team against, in theory, worse competition. I think I looked it up the other day on Tankathon, and the remaining strength of schedule, I think the Kings have the 7th lowest by winning percentage, the remaining opponents at like 49% win percentage. So
you're still using Tankathon this year,
Still using Tankathon. Still found a way to go on tankathon.com. But yeah, they realistically, I mean, if you go down it, we already played Boston in Boston. You played Milwaukee in Milwaukee. I think they only have one more game against Denver. They have a couple against Dallas, but a lot of the best teams in the league, the Kings have already played at least once. So I think that there's, when you look at the second half of the schedule, if you're just going to, it's always dangerous to schedule a watch, but if you are going to do it, you got to feel pretty good about the Kings, as crazy as that is to say. It is a lot of road games, but you got to feel good about where they're at.
A lot of road games coming up in February. I think they only have 3 home games. We were just talking about this before we press record. By the way, anybody in the chat, if you could let us know how this audio is, that'd be great. Yeah. This is my first time playing with this setup. I
kind of check it while James was talking, and it sounded good. I see that Adam said that it's awesome. There is like a little bit of crackling every couple of seconds.
There's going to be a little stuff here and there, but forgive us. Yeah, I'm with you, man. I think that it is tough. Like top 5 is really freaking tough in the West.
It sounds crazy,
but they're 4th right now, and we're halfway through the season. Let's actually, I'll get to right now. I have a couple different audio quotes that I want to go and reference throughout the course of this. And actually, I think this is a good time to hear Coach's statement when he was asked by Jake, who now is a sports reporter for
CBS 13, I believe.
That is CBS 13. Jake, I love you. You're great. I'm sorry that I should have that down by now. But asked a great question to Coach and talked about how much more difficult the second half of the season will be now that there are expectations.
Hey, Mike, building off of that, this is not a feel-good story anymore. You're halfway through the season. You guys are legit. Is it going to be harder the second half, do you think?
I've said this to our guys before. To me, what I've experienced, it's easy to kind of get up in the mix. It's hard to stay in the mix because now teams have a different level of respect for you when they play you. Their level of preparation is different, and they're trying to knock you back down anytime they play you so they can replace you or, in their minds, put you in your quote-unquote place. So in order for us to stay at the top of the mountain, we're going to have to bring it to another level. And that starts with this team defensively because we have a tremendous amount of room to grow on that side of the ball. And if we buy into it, believe it, and go do it, we can be real good for a long time.
Yeah, so let them know what you think of Coach's comments there about the second half of the season and specifically how much better they need to be defensively while I desperately plug my laptop in.
You got to go get your charger. I mean, I'm honestly, I had to do the Sacktown Sports recap show here, so I didn't get to hear Mike Brown's comments. And that really surprised me for all the reasons I just listed. I actually, it makes sense. Mike's not going to come out and be like, yeah, the second half of the season should be a cakewalk. We're sitting pretty, and there's not really much that we need to improve on. It makes sense that Mike's going to, and it is going to be a big point of emphasis for them to stay focused in the second half of this season. And he's right. People aren't going, I think the Kings for, the first half of the season we're able to catch some teams off guard thinking that this is still the old Sacramento Kings team or they would revert back to their old ways. But I think now people respect this team. And, I don't think, the Lakers the other day, they come in and put up 136 on the Kings. I think they were ready to play and knew what they were coming against. It just feels like, I think that's a little bit of coach speak in terms of Mike just wanting to keep his guys focused in the second half of the season and not having them feel like, oh yeah, like we can, because I think these 2 Houston games have been a great example of this team kind of, Frank used the term playing with their food. And it kind of was a little bit of that where it's like these guys know that they should be able to take care of Houston pretty easily. And yet you see Houston be able to hang around with them for 3 quarters. Tonight they get a 20-point lead, and then the skirmish happens, and Houston kind of pulled it back a little. It was a 12-point game, and then the Kings go on their own 7-0 run to kind of pull it away. But I think that this team, Mike is right. Like they do need to stay focused in the second half of the season. There is some room to improve. Defensively, especially, like this is not a perfect team, and by no means should they feel like they can go out and beat everyone. But in my opinion, the second half of the season should be easier than the first half of the season, especially when you're talking about, that early April. What is the third month? May? Is May the third?
January, February, March, April, May.
May.
I have to do that every time people ask me
bro.
months. It's real tough for me.
Just, when you get towards the end of the season, that's when teams are really trying to place themselves where they want. You might get a couple more teams. The San Antonio Spurs, if you play them late in the season, they're going to be tanking. Utah maybe going a completely different direction if you play them second half of the season. So in my opinion, not that I don't agree with Mike, I just, I do feel like the second half of the season will probably be easier than the first half. Do you feel the same?
I definitely get where you're coming from. Like, I feel like the identity is set of this team. The beginning of the season, there were growing pains for sure.
Mm-hmm.
And I think just adjustments to getting used to each other. This is a very new group. There's some same faces, but it's a lot of new players.
Yeah.
It's a whole new coaching staff, an entirely new coaching staff outside of a couple people. I think Lindsey Harding and Doug Christie are the only two I can think of that are carryovers. And I think that they've done a good job getting all that together, and that you are going to be elite on the offensive end of the floor, but you can't really find consistency on the offensive end of the floor. And that's something Coach talked about in there and talked about more so in the presser as well, that like you can't just expect to win games by putting up 130, 140. I know they put up 130 in 4 straight games, which is insane. Absurd, as good as it gets on the offensive end. And Harrison Barnes has been great during that time. Obviously, Domantas Sabonis has been great during that time. De'Aaron Fox has been great. Malik Monk had a solid night tonight. Malik Monk had a good first half. Terrence Davis had a good second half. And if you just have guys alternate like that, Trey Lyles had a great game last game against the Houston Rockets, the first one of their 2.
A good one tonight as well.
And a solid one tonight. So I think offensively they're going to be there. It's defensively they really do need to figure it out, though, because you even saw in the first half of this game, it was pretty concerning. Like, I know Jalen Green was just kind of hitting shots, but he ended that first half with 25 and 0 assists. And I'm glad they came out in that second half and started blitzing him, doubling him, and just forcing a guy that's not a good playmaker, but a good scorer to be a playmaker.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like, other people are going to beat us. And also you need to make good decisions when we blitz you. And I don't think that we saw Jalen Green do that. He had 2 points in the second half after 25 in the first half.
2 assists as well in the second half after having none in the first. So that, if anything, that shows that the blitzing did work, and to your point, made him make other decisions besides, I'm going to shoot this ball.
And there was nobody else that was getting it done for Houston, but that adjustment worked really quick. I mean, 26 points for the Rockets in that third quarter, 43 for the Kings.
They had 48 points in the second half after scoring 66 in that first half.
Compared to the Kings 43 in the third quarter.
Yeah, right. Exactly. Kings almost outscored them just in that third quarter. And how about that third quarter, by the way, too? I mean, I think in Wednesday's game, Kings had 41 in the fourth.
41-20, I believe.
And that was the highest amount of points that Houston had given up all season in a quarter. What do they do tonight? Come in and top that with 43 in the third. So clearly something, again, like the Kings knew that they were a better team than Houston in both of these games. And that's what I think makes it seem so frustrating that, even though this is, like I mentioned, 3 straight games of 20-plus point victories, it just didn't feel like that. It didn't feel like...
Yeah, I was shocked when you said that. I almost didn't believe you. I was like, what is that? Bro, it's crazy. It's crazy, actually.
Make sense. And the fact that, they allowed 100, or they scored 134 points in that Laker game and still lost. I mean, that should also be a 20-point victory if you score 134.
Right.
It's crazy. The offensive talent on this team is absurd, and it just keeps being. We've talked about this a ton of times, and Jordy was the first one who really said it. But the fact that you do have De'Aaron Domas every night, and then that third guy is just a complete X factor. Tonight it was Harrison Barnes, 27 points. Terrence Davis has a good night offensively, 22 points. It's just crazy to me how deep this team is.
Yeah, I mean, Malik Monk shooting 31% from 3 this year. Harrison Barnes is at 33, 34.
Yep.
And we're still talking about a top 5, top 7 offense in the NBA. those guys have had their stretches of, I mean, they're obviously still great shooters. They have gravity and provide spacing that even no matter what those numbers say throughout the course of this year, they have respective opponents, obviously. But before we kind of look a little bit bigger picture and move off of tonight's game, I want to get to Coach Brown's opening comments from the post-game presser tonight. And Coach likes to talk. I don't mind it at all.
Right.
Coach is my favorite person to talk to and is always dropping
Besides
bars. Well, yeah, you know.
Keegan's my favorite.
And then KZ Okpala's got to be up there too, you know.
Goat.
But yeah, so this is going to be a little bit of Coach talking here, but just kind of his opening statements on, talks about the fan base, being very appreciative of that, and just general takeaways from tonight's game against the Houston Rockets, game 41.
First thing I like to do is, man, I want to thank the fans. That building is loud. Those fans are into the game for 48 minutes. You know, I've acknowledged them and how loud they've been in the past, and it's no different, but I want to especially thank them now because there's obviously been terrible weather out there, and they're still showing up. And to jump in a car and drive in the crappy weather that we've been seeing and all that other stuff, that's much appreciated by myself and everybody else in the organization. So again, we love them. We love them because they're the loudest fans in the NBA. But more importantly, during this crazy weather time, they're still showing up. And they're showing up in force, with a lot of force. So thank you, Sacramento. Hopefully we'll keep playing well for you guys, and we love that you guys keep showing up no matter what's going on outside. I mean, our second half is, in my opinion, a testament of who we can be. You know, we are capable of defending at a high level. I don't care who's in front of us. We just have to get consistent with it on a night-in, night-out basis. We have to want to do it, and that was evident in the second half. Foxy's the head of a snake. He was fantastic on the ball. He jump-started us defensively. And then we just had a lot of great performances behind him. I thought Trey's been fantastic with his defensive assignments. His verticality on the backside, I thought, started us or projected us or got us going, defensively. It was beautiful. He did his work early. He did everything that we asked of him. And he made a heck of a play that everybody just fed off of. Domantas was fantastic defensively. I mean, I can go down the line. Our ability to take care of the ball in the second half was tremendous. We had 4 turnovers for 2 points in the second half. Phenomenal. Because we got stops and we were able to get out and run, 21 fast break points. You know, Jalen Green had 25, talented young man, 25 points in the first half, 2 points in the second half. I can go on and on. TD was great in the second half. You know, drove me crazy in the first half. I love him, but he drove me crazy in the first half, like a couple other players. But his second half was phenomenal on both ends of the floor. And then, I mean, Domas. I mean, you know, if he and Foxy aren't an all-star, shame on the whole process. Because those guys are more than deserving. You know, you're talking about a guy that is, you know, he's tied the single season record for triple doubles for us in the Sacramento era. Yes. That says something, and it's not like we're sitting in 12th place. You know, I truly believe you have to give heavy consideration to everybody's record when it comes to voting for all-star players. And Domas and Foxy, they're just not getting enough love, and it's a shame. You know, the triple-double he had, the way he got it, I think Oscar Robertson was the only one get a triple-double like that? In the that to me, that's absolutely amazing. That's amazing. And, it's not like this is a one-off because this is not his first triple-double. So hopefully sooner than later, these guys will start getting the appropriate love from around the league that they deserve. Media, starting with the media, because media has a lot of influence, especially the national media. They got a lot of influence on the people that they're writing to and speaking to. And hopefully Domas and Foxy will get their due respect because they're doing it night in and night out.
Coach might be done, and we were too busy playing around. But first of all, like I said, just love talking with Coach. Every time that Coach talks, I am eagerly listening and tend to agree with most of everything that he says.
Yep.
It makes me sound smarter if I agree with the head coach.
Absolutely.
So, that seems like a smart way to go.
Media 101.
Yeah, exactly. Domas should be an all-star.
That's just a fact. Like that's
a fact. I will say I thought it was interesting that Coach said that he really thinks that team success should be factored a lot into all-stars, and that he really was adamant that like De'Aaron should be a part of that too. And you guys heard it in that recording there. What's the balance? Because the obvious one is Shy, right? Okay, actually, let's take Shy out of it because Shy's numbers are too ridiculous. Yeah. Like I don't think there's anything to be said there. But let's say Lauri Markkanen. Let's say, as we've broken down before in a previous episode, it comes down to the very last spot in the All-Star game. And just for the sake of this conversation, let's just forget other people, right? But let's say it comes down to Lauri Markkanen versus De'Aaron Fox. And Lauri's numbers look better, which I think is about true right now. I should have these numbers in front of me, but I don't. By the way, chat, absolutely not shots at Jason Anderson and Sam. No. Those are friends. Yeah. I love both of those people.
It was shots at Sam, though. He
Sam, pick it up.
National media,
pick it up.
And that is Sam needs to do more work.
No shots. Just a total joke because Coach was talking about media, and we got these nameplates right in front of us right here. If
good point, JB.
The Jazz have a worse record significantly, but Lauri's numbers are better, like how much should that factor in?
I think, and JV makes a good point in the comments here, that Lauri does get a home court advantage boost because obviously the game is in Utah, and you could argue that they should probably get a Utah player in there. And I think that is also my argument for why I think Lauri probably would get the nod, because it's depending on what Houston's record is looking like. Utah's record is looking like. If they're 500 or above 500, or maybe one or two games below 500, I think it makes more sense to include a Utah player, Utah's best player at that, than include a second Sacramento King. Because I do think that Utah's, especially story of, this is a team that traded Rudy Gobert, traded Donovan Mitchell. We talked about the Kings predictions preseason.
Yeah.
The Utah Jazz
were the most extreme one.
They were supposed to be with the Houston Rockets of bottom tier, 10, 11 wins, maybe getting 25 wins by the end of the season. That needs to be recognized in some capacity. And the fact that the fact that Utah has accomplished that, and Lauri Markkanen is the face of that, and Lauri Markkanen is himself putting up all-star numbers. I think in that exact situation of Markkanen versus Fox, I would give the nod to Markkanen. I would give, period, end of sentence. I hear the argument for Fox 100%, and obviously Kings fans are going to say that's absurd.
Yeah, you're about to get dragged for this.
That's totally fine. I like to view myself as a realist, and I think if I know the NBA like I think I know the NBA, I think Markkanen would get the nod.
I think that it does matter, the wins, obviously, but it depends how big of a margin we're talking about here. Like, how big is the difference? Are the Kings sitting at 4 or 5 when it comes to this,
Right.
like, as we get closer and closer to the All-Star? And does Utah continue to fall down? They're 3-7 in their last 10 games.
Yep.
If they continue to fall down and are more of an 11-12,
Right.
like, is that conversation different?
I think
If Damian Lillard slows down, the Blazers are 19-22 right now. Does De'Aaron get the nod over him for a spot? You know, like, I think it depends how good the Kings do from here. If they can, they're on a 3-game win streak right now. If they can get these next 2, kind of keep that momentum going into this next little 4-game homestand, I think it is that they have, that's going to be against tough opponents. But like, if the Kings can keep rolling, then I think the wins is really going to have some extra pull, right? Like, if you are, what James is talking about, like flirting with 8 games over 500 type of thing, like, if you could start to get to that conversation, I think it matters a little bit more, but it's still TBD. Like, I'm still at the point pretty much where we were at when we recorded that last pod, that like Sabonis should 100% be in.
Yeah.
De'Aaron, it's just tougher. There's less spots for backcourt, and there's more all-star caliber backcourt players in the Western Conference.
Right. In the backcourt, I'm not even factoring in the backcourt element of it all, but it's also like, okay, so the Kings could get 2 all-stars in, but then you look at Denver and, you know, Aaron Gordon can't get a nod over. You know, Denver's the number 1 seed in the Western Conference right now. How are you going to have a team, the Sacramento Kings, who are 4th or 5th, have 2 all-stars, but not have Denver have 2? Or, you know, Memphis is probably should have. If Desmond Bane plays the entire season, he's probably an all-star. Jaren Jackson Jr. or the third, when Jaren Jackson Jr. has played half the season, but his half of the season has probably been all-star worthy. Those guys probably aren't going to make it, but I just think it's tough, you know, like, and frankly, Domantas Sabonis is playing so well, he could be taking votes away from De'Aaron Fox. Like, because when you really think about it, people are going to centralize Domas's performance as the reason why the Kings are performing so well. And yes, De'Aaron Fox is clearly a big part of that, but he is not the main guy behind it. It is Domantas Sabonis. And I think just that secondary aspect of, you know, De'Aaron being the secondary option, I think just hurts him a lot when you're considering him going against other teams' first options.
For sure. I think you have a really good point about Aaron Gordon in Denver. Right. For sure. I've definitely seen people clamoring for that, for the reason we're talking about, the wins. And
Pelicans too, like CJ. CJ could make it.
CJ is going to start to get a little bit of buzz.
BI probably hasn't played enough games, but you know, there's a lot of guys who deserve to have 2 players in the All-Star game. Kawhi, if he plays enough games leading into that, you assume Paul George could sneak in, maybe one or both of them. Who knows?
What if you, to take this a little bit more big picture and just talk about takeaways from some of these guys now that we're halfway through the season, and we'll start with Keegan Murray. I think that he is shooting, let me get this number in front of me, but he's shooting a ridiculous percentage from 3, kind of as expected. 5.8 3-point attempts per game, 40.4%. That is his elite skill. Coaches challenged him of what else do you do? But what have your impressions been of Keegan Murray during the time that he's been a member of the Sacramento Kings, and like, what growth have you seen?
It's been about as expected, with a little bit of I'll give him a plus in terms of production. Like, you knew he was going to come in and be a shooter. How good of a shooter off the bat was kind of my question. I thought he would kind of be more of a 37, 38% 3-point shooter to start his career. He came out the blocks hot. I mean, his first week as a Sacramento King, he was on fire. It didn't seem like he was going to miss. I remember you and me constantly being like, every time it goes up, you think it's going in. And when it didn't go in, it was a surprise. He's definitely cooled down since then, haven't felt that same level of confidence with him since then. I think he himself is starting to get more comfortable and a lot more confident in the shots he's taking. I think he now knows going into a game, like, what are the shots I'm looking for and how often can I get them off? That's really the only thing that I have seen from Keegan that I'm willing to put a stamp on. Like, I know for a fact he is going to be a good shooter, a good spot up shooter coming off screens. Everything else to me is still up in the air on whether or not he can do it at an NBA level. His defense, we've seen him improve, especially as a weak side defender. Mike has made a point to point out how good Keegan has been as a weak side defender recently.
I do think he's gotten a lot better.
A lot better at drawing charges as well. He leads the team in blocks, which is
Really?
not something talked about. Yeah, he leads the team in blocks. And, you know, I wouldn't say he's by any stretch of the imagination a rim protector, but showing the ability to come over and get those blocks has been big. You know, he's not by any stretch of the imagination a lockdown defender on ball. His playmaking is non-existent. His ball handling is not non-existent, but it's pretty elementary, not the level of an elementary school, but in terms of NBA, like, he's not crossing anybody over. He doesn't really have any moves. He really struggles in shot creation for himself. He really doesn't have much of a bag.
I think it's 71.3% prior to tonight's game against the Rockets of his shots have come with 0 dribbles.
Right.
And that's fine in this offense, but like, that still brings the same question of what ceiling are we talking about here? And you and I have talked about this. Keegs says this in the chat, and the YouTube can see it here. Chat says Keegan needs to drive stronger around the rim. He gets blocked a lot. He needs to be more creative around the rim.
He gets blocked a lot.
He does. Coach has specifically said, like, go and dunk it and stop all this, like, double clutching, trying to lay it up.
Yeah, and I don't really know what it is, the reason why he's getting blocked, but it just feels I actually did look it up. He's only been blocked 28 times so far this season.
Only in 28 is
Malik leads the team in shots blocked with like 50 or something, which I was shocked by. Keegan's like 3rd or 4th on the team in times getting blocked. But for whatever reason, it just every time he gets blocked, it's so loud. Like, it just feels like he gets blocked and it goes to the 3rd row, or it gets literally spiked back into the court. It's really, really strange because he does go up sometimes with some real aggression. We've seen he got a dunk tonight. He's gotten that baseline, kind of like a quick throwdown a couple times this season. But for whatever reason, it does seem like he kind of goes up soft and puts it in front of people's faces. And at an NBA level, you'll get your shit sent. And his shit has gotten sent multiple times. And that's a really big problem for me that I saw coming into the league was, again, he's got no finishing moves. Like, his move is, I'm taller than you, I'm going to try and finish above you, but he's got no Euro step.
Monty mentioned at his presser, like, Keegan's dunk percentage and how he dunked everything.
Yes.
And that was like his main finish. And it was never like dunking on people or anything, but just around people, right? And like, we haven't seen that.
No.
I think that there's just a clear like adjustment to NBA physicality. I think he'll get there. You know, somebody said Keegan spent all his VC on 3-point shooting.
He did. He absolutely.
This is hilarious. At very least, he ended up buying some leg sleeves at some point this year, because at the beginning of the year he had nothing. He looked like he was like walked in the tunnel with a brown t-shirt on, you know, like it was
sweats,
fully out
and
there.
Some 2K shoes.
Exactly. So yeah, 2K shoes. That's pretty great. But yeah, I mean, I still think that Keegan has. You found a picture, by the way, of Keegan with tattoos, photoshopped on him, and that was so funny. So funny. Yeah, Keegan has kind of been as expected for me. Anybody on YouTube can see this Photoshop of Keegan Murray with tattoos,
looking like Kyle Kuzma.
It is hilarious.
There you go.
It is hilarious. It just looks like an entirely different person. That guy does not have a list of his favorite burgers. That guy does not. So it's all good.
Refocus.
Shout out to everybody that's here in the chat. If you have any sort of questions for us that you want to throw our way, definitely let us know throughout the course of this. Next guy to move to here, Harrison Barnes, who's been extremely good for this team recently.
Man,
you and I have been harsh, but
at least
these last 10 games, man, HB is averaging. Let's actually even shorten this a little bit.
If you do his last 6, I think that's
6?
since the new year. Even if you just do since the turn of the new year, I just looked it up. 20 points per game.
January. I got it including tonight's game.
Right. Beautiful.
7 games, 21.1 points, 4.1 rebounds, but on 53% from the field, 50% from 3.
Talk about it.
50% from 3 on 7.1 per game. So 53% from the field, 50% from 3, 91% from the free throw line. Like, Keegan is going crazy. HB's going crazy right now.
Yeah.
He had that 30 piece, which only will happen when you are not in the building.
Yep.
I swear to God.
Yep. I did
Understandably so.
Had to leave that game.
Had to. Shout out everybody dealing with power issues and all the bullshit in this storm.
Bro.
Hope everybody's safe and good.
It's so tough.
Pain in the ass. I can only imagine.
It's not fun.
Yeah, yours was.
It was not fun.
Did not sound like a good time.
No.
HB has also been dealing with power issues.
Has he really?
HB has had his power out for a little while. And
Really?
Yes, a couple days.
Oh, he's just focusing on ball then.
Apparently, and we just got some confirmation today in his post-game presser that his power is back on. He said that they must have redirected the beam to his house.
Right. Makes sense.
I can't believe HB made that joke. I
Right.
wasn't expecting a little joke from HB there. But HB's been so good, man. And I think what this leads to is like, what do you do? What do you do
Don't put that
at the
ball in my
deadline?
court, bro. Don't put that ball in my
No, but it's a
Yeah.
tough question,
No, it's
right?
it's incredibly tough question.
He's an expiring contract.
Right.
If he walks for nothing, okay, let me present this to you. If the Kings make it to the postseason,
Mhm.
they are in a postseason. Let's say I've always used the Minnesota Timberwolves as like best case scenario.
Sure.
Last year,
Sure.
Minnesota Timberwolves is best case scenario for this team's Kings team.
I think we could beat that. I mean, what?
They went to game 7.
Okay.
I don't know
I hear what you're saying, just
exactly what they
results,
were, but
right.
they went to game 7 against a team that was eventually in the Western Conference Finals, I
Right.
believe,
Yeah, the Grizzlies.
in the Memphis Grizzlies, and they lost that, but that could have been anybody's game.
Mhm.
And say the Kings have that sort of first round performance, but then get knocked out, and Harrison Barnes is a big part of it, and then he walks for nothing. Is that?
Yeah, that doesn't feel good.
But if you don't have HB, then say you don't have that same performance in the postseason. You know what I mean? Like, I think there's an aspect of like, I think there's two ways to look at that. Like, oh shit, somebody that was just a huge part of this is now not here next year. So what are we going to do? But there's also the aspect of like, well, if he wasn't here, we wouldn't have been able to do this in the first place.
Right.
You know, like it's just such a weird predicament to be in with HB right now.
It's impossible because, I mean, it's not impossible. It's just I don't envy Monty McNair for having to come up with the solution for what it's going to be, because you can make the argument that the right move is trading him at the deadline and getting. The thing is, I don't even know what his value is at this point. I don't know what team would, because we've talked about this. I mean, if you get rid of HB, you kind of you still need a 3 or 4, a starter level, and someone who does a lot of similar things that HB in theory does for you. And not a lot of teams have that guy and are willing to give it up
For another one of those guys.
Another one of those guys
it's
who's
a
just on
super
an expiring contract.
Right.
Like, there's just not a good path or a clear path that goes from Harrison Barnes being traded to the Kings getting something of good value for them in return. But if you don't trade him, you then have to deal with, like you're saying, the possibility of him walking. Or then do you talk extension? What does an HB extension look like?
Is the best
How
case
long?
scenario re-signing Harrison Barnes at the end of this season?
I don't think so. I think that is continuity, not for the sake of continuity, because Harrison does bring something. But again, like, I will make the argument that Harrison Barnes as your starting small forward, it's just, I keep settling is the term that I come to, where it's just like, you know that there's better out there, but you can definitely do worse. And that's fine, because you do have a mediocre starter level guy there. but I don't know where the Kings get better from that point. If Harrison Barnes, especially if you lock him down to $15 to $20 million a year, I have no idea what an HB extension number would even look like. But I just think you kind of are locking yourself into your lineup at that point. I mean, and I don't know how good is this Kings roster 3 years from whatever 2 years from now with Harrison Barnes, De'Aaron Fox, Kevin Huerter, Domantas Sabonis, Keegan Murray. I don't know, but do you want to bet on these 5 guys? Do you? It's a matter of if you feel like the building is over. You know what I mean?
It can't be. You know what I mean? Like, the ceiling of this team is not
a championship. It's
not
even
at all.
Second round. It's a third team.
It's
on
a second round
team.
It's a second round team at best. Yeah, on a miracle like what we're talking about that one year that Portland went.
You can even argue Memphis maybe makes it a year that they shouldn't. Maybe they're not the one of the 4 best teams in the league. So I don't know. To me, the clear position of upgrade is that Harrison Barnes spot, and it's okay with me if you kind of don't spend money on that now and try and find a solution later. But to me, you just can't lock yourself in at that position.
I think you can, because then you could improve with like a trade down the line. Like, I don't know how you replace him in the short term.
Right.
And you can't get worse in the short term. If you get worse in the short term, you're screwed. Like, this team is, I was going to say short-sighted, right? But it is about right now. And you can't take a step back to take 2 steps forward in 2 years. I just don't think this team is in a spot to do that. Yeah. I think you could re-sign HB, and then again, not with the goal of, or in thinking that like you are going to flip him later, but like that still being a possibility. Right. Like if Keegan was an upside wing rather than this like high floor, low ceiling, which some people are going to hate me for still calling him that, but that's honestly what I still look at it as, then this is a different conversation, right? Because you need an elite wing. Yes. I think is kind of your point. Yes. And I'm with you, especially when you have Fox and Domas, and neither one are great defenders or difference makers defensively. You need a difference maker defensively from that wing. Right. Maybe Keegan can become that guy defensively. Maybe. Right.
Maybe. But the problem is you're banking on maybe.
Right. And ideally, you have like one of like a HB or Keegan type, and then another of the more upside type that has creation or defensive playmaking ability. And you don't really have that. So I think point being, like, it's going to be a really interesting. They're in an interesting predicament when it comes to Harrison Barnes here.
Have they played well enough through 41 games for you to confidently say, "All right, let's run it back"? And there's still a whole nother 41 games to come to a different conclusion. But through 41 games, you have seen, 35 games of Fox, Sabonis, Huerter, Murray, and Barnes. Offensively, I think we can confidently say this team is that 5, especially with that 5 at the helm. That's a pretty good offensive scoring 5. It works. They play well off of each other enough. I think HB still gets a little lost in that starting 5, but it's good enough offensively. I don't know if I've seen enough to be like, for the next, I'm banking on the growth of this lineup for the next 2 years. I don't know how much more potential is there for growth from the guys in that lineup.
The internal growth is hard to bet on, right? Like, you maybe can think that De'Aaron or Domas can get better from here, but I don't know that
Sabonis can get better than what we're seeing right now.
It's like high volume 3-point shooting, and that's all we're really talking. Like, and again, I'm not betting on that, but like that's a possibility. Could Malik Monk take another jump? Could Kevin Huerter take another jump as a ball handler? Could Davion Mitchell take a jump where he can actually shoot the ball? I think that could Keegan Murray become an off the dribble guy? Because we've seen like very rare flashes, but there were moments we were sitting side by side at Summer League where like, what the hell is this? Yeah. So I think there's a lot of possibilities, right? But I'm not betting on any of it. But I will say I'd be okay with running it back with that top 7, with the idea in mind that you're just waiting for the right opportunity to add your next third star. Because at some point in my mind, this team is making another big trade. I'm not saying this year.
Right.
It could be next year. It could be not even this off season, but the next off season. But I think that's how we've seen Monty build out this team. That's how we've seen Rockets teams of the past being built, where Monty comes from.
Yeah.
And to me, that's the only way that this team gets their third star and becomes like this three-headed snake.
Yeah.
So I'm okay with running it back, but only with like the asterisk that you're waiting for the right opportunity to take that next big swing, for the Lauri Markkanen, for the OG Anunoby, for like one of those type of guys.
I just keep sitting here and thinking, and you saying that, like, if they were to try and wait for this next big move, what are their trade assets? I mean,
it's just going to be it's just going to be the picks, and they have to give that unprotected to Atlanta and then trade picks from there. And really, it's Davion Mitchell and Keegan Murray.
Only going down past this, after this year, I don't think Davion has nearly the same value. Keegan Murray, I guess, still has some value, but the more that the NBA learns about him, I feel like the less high-level value he'll have. Harrison Barnes is on an expiring contract. That's incredibly valuable. If you sign him to a 3-year, $50 million extension or whatever, I have no idea what a Harrison Barnes extension number would be, but at that point, like, I don't know how you swing a trade for Jimmy Butler. How are the Kings getting Jimmy Butler?
Right.
It's got to be a Harrison Barnes.
I think it's
Keegan
really you're
Murray
talking Keegan
picks.
Murray. Yeah. Yeah. I mean,
and that's the only way you get it done.
I every time I come back to like, how do you get your third star? To me, the answer is Keegan Murray. And maybe it's actually Harrison Barnes in picks, but that also means you're forfeiting the protections that you have on your 2024 or 2025 pick with the Atlanta Hawks, and just willing to call that unprotected, because you need to do that in order to free up these further picks or these future picks.
Yep.
So it leaves them in a little bit of a tough scenario, but to me, that's how they eventually take that next step.
Right.
But it'd be really hard if HB left this offseason and there was nothing to show for it, and then you sort of took a step back for that reason. So I think it would just leave you in a tough spot. Next guy I want to get to here as we kind of go through the rotation. Actually, let's do I was going to do somebody else, but let's do Trey Lyles real quick. My question for Trey. Trey has been so good recently. Frank,
hi guys.
What is up?
Just want to say hi. Hi guys.
Okay, let me ask you. I'm going to ask you the question I was going to ask Chris. Franklin Cardicelli for the audio listeners. Should Trey Lyles be a part of the rotation night in and night out at this point?
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. I think he's proven that, I mean, he can bring it, whether it's a power forward spot or he played some backup center. I know that Mike Brown said today that especially if Kevin were to miss more time, he wants Trey Lyles on the floor there playing 4. I mean, Keegan at the 2, that's a different conversation. I think that he's proven he can shoot the basketball at the 2 level, but I like me some Trey Lyles minutes right now. I think he's bringing it right now. What do you guys think?
I am with you. I'll get you one more before I get you out of here. I don't want to hold you for too long.
I don't want to interrupt you guys.
You're totally fine. I appreciate this, actually. Malik Monk, this year, his numbers overall have actually been pretty underwhelming, but he's had some good stretches, some poor stretches. First quarter of this game, he was totally on fire. But what has the Malik Monk experience been like for you compared to what you expected when the Kings signed him?
I mean, I expected a little more on the 3-point end of things. I mean, he's been kind of streaky. I think he's around 31, 32%. I have to check what it is after tonight. He had a good night tonight, 4 or 5 before he got tossed. What a moment that was. But I will say that what he has brought, and I say it to Chris every time I look, whenever time he does a crazy layup, I say, Buddy Hield cannot do that. The things that he does with the basketball, especially the distributing, is complete night and day with Buddy Hield. And that's kind of who, I think that was the discussion earlier in the season was, Laker fans are saying Buddy Hield is doing this or that, and they're trying to trade for him, so they're kind of trying to resonate. But Malik Monk, the way he's been able to move the basketball around, his playmaking has been huge. 3-point shooting, hopefully that kind of comes on a little later, 31, 32%, like a little more out of your backup shooting guard. But what he brings in the paint and how he goes to the rim, his athleticism, his big poster dunks, those have been fun to see. But again, it kind of comes back to, like we talked about, I think you talked about it earlier in the year with if Davion, something were to happen with him, Malik Monk can go in that backup guard role, and you feel pretty confident with him being there. So 6th man of the year, maybe. Mike Brown, stock on the table. Who knows? Crazy stuff. But fellas, I appreciate you. Have a good Friday. Everyone out there, have a good Friday. And light the beam.
You about the flat stick?
I don't know. I'm going to go home. I mean, it's kind of late. What do you think? Unless you guys go in 30 minutes.
I think we are planning. And
you are?
Well, at least I was.
Hey,
planning.
I have a radio show to do tomorrow, so there's
Not
no
for
way
Joe
I'll be
Scott.
doing it.
Yeah, of course.
Guys, I'm definitely going to flat stick.
Like 10, 15 minutes. You
Oh,
could
yeah.
join in on this if you want.
Okay, I'll just sit in the back.
Yeah, just sit in the
Alright.
back. Just sit in the back.
By the way, we coined the phrase earlier in this. The baby beamers is the
Ooh,
next
yeah.
generation of
Yeah.
children.
Right, for people who have babies during this season of beaming,
That makes
baby
sense.
beamers.
I thought you were talking about a play on the Yankees, like the baby
Ah,
bombers. I thought you were
yes.
play on that, but
Yeah.
no, the baby beamers.
Yeah.
Can we expect a little Carticelli being a baby
beam
beamer?
Carticelli.
Allie, I know you're not watching this. No,
She's a big
no.
KP
We were
fan.
talking today about how was it me and you were talking about how it was me and you. How I'm 28. My parents were my age. They had 2 kids.
Yes, right.
We will not be baby beaming though.
No.
We're gonna put that on the after beamer, not the afterburner, after beamer. So we're
Hey.
gonna wait. We're gonna wait. Sorry, finish your show, guys. Finish your show. I'm just back here.
You're totally good. Chris, let's get your thoughts on the same of, first of all, Trey Lyles should be a part of the rotation, right?
Yes, I'm getting a Trey Lyles jersey
Like,
ASAP.
There are Trey Rodman jerseys need to be
Yes.
going around.
Oh my God.
He's rebounding the hell out of the ball.
Yeah.
Coach Brown has just been, in my mind, at least from what we've seen, so good for Trey Lyles. And Trey Lyles has been super responsive to Coach Brown throughout this process. There was a time earlier in the year that we've talked about here that he told Trey, listen, when I was in Golden State, everybody knew to close out soft on you because you were going to pump fake every single time and put the ball on the floor. And this was the thing that when he got traded from Detroit, everybody was telling me from Detroit that, like, you are going to get tired of his pump fakes.
Yeah.
And I eventually got there. And that had gone away at the beginning of the year. He had a quick trigger, and then now he can put the ball on the floor because people actually will close out on him. And then the most recent thing we've seen is that Trey Lyles said after that first game against the Houston Rockets, where he had 15 points in the fourth quarter and 6 rebounds in the fourth quarter, that coach called him out in front of the group to be a better defensive rebounder.
Yeah.
And through the last 10 games prior to this one they just played against the Rockets, he was second on the team in rebounding with 6 rebounds a game, which is still less than half of Domas, who's leading the team. But 1.5 of those offensive. Trey has been a great rebounder. He's a good shooter when he's out there. His effort is really solid. Trey Lyles should just absolutely be a part of the rotation at this point.
Yeah, I don't even think it's a question. Like, to me, he's absolutely. I mean, I was even thinking playoff rotation today, and it feels like he's pretty solidly in there. And we've seen him take some minutes at that backup center. If the Kings don't make a move for backup center, and we're still sitting in the same scenario, and especially during playoff times, the rotation gets crunched down to 7 or 8 guys. I think Trey Lyles is pretty comfortably in that 7 to 8 role. I think Davion, if he stays on the team, is probably pretty firm in his backup point guard minutes, and Malik as well. But I think Trey is pretty essential to what this team is trying to do, especially with their stars off the court.
Got a little distracted by chat saying, well, that's the wrong one. Saying that Frankie looks like he's about to get bitten by a radioactive spider while taking pictures. You do have a little bit of Spider-Man vibes going on.
A little Peter Parker vibes.
I just said that's my favorite superhero, so I take that as a compliment. I mean, I don't know. Like Tom Holland's also like not the worst looking guy. I'll take that as well. So.
You got a little Tom Holland in you, Well,
Allie, don't want
this is not a great episode for Allie. What? So the whole altercation that happened today. You talk about this, and then I have which, by the way, we still have like Pulse Performer, and the answer is just Domantas Sabonis. Like we don't need to get that out of the way. Went ridiculous tonight. But the whole little altercation that happened today, there was a loose ball that both Malik Monk and Garrison Matthews were chasing down the court. Garrison Matthews gave Malik a little bit of a bump. In lifetime, I thought Malik just sold it, actually. But watching the replay, Garrison definitely gave him a little bit of a bump.
Intentional.
And I don't know that, like, it didn't really look to me like Malik really felt that much of a way about it. It's just that more so after the whistle got called, Garrison picked up the ball And to me, it looked like Malik was just kind of being petty and hit the ball out of Garrison's hand, and it went straight to the referee. But it seemed like he was just trying to, a lot of times players would take the ball out of the opposing team's hand, try to inbound fast. Kings are a really, really high-paced team trying to get teams while they're complaining. Garrison Matthews was not very happy. Gary Bird was not very happy, and kind of went up and not headbutt, but put his head against Malik Monk, and then just sort of chaos ensued from there. It wasn't that bad. That makes it sound worse than it was.
Big hold me back energy for sure.
Big hold me back energy for sure. But Malik Monk gets ejected. Chimezie Metu gets ejected. Garrison Matthews gets ejected. And Tari Eason gets ejected. Like, what did you see there? What the hell happened?
Yeah, I didn't even see the initial. I had to watch the replay later on Twitter, but because I didn't see the initial thing, I saw the dust up. Didn't make sense to me. I mean, I think you're completely right. Like, we see it all the time. Players try and get the ball. Sometimes players will literally just grab the ball out of dude's hand and give it to the referee. I didn't think it was anything too malicious on Malik's part. I think he was being a troll. I think he was being an ass, but did that deserve an ejection? Absolutely not. I think Garrison initiated the first contact with Malik, which drew the initial foul. Garrison also was the one who got in Malik's face, went forehead to forehead. I think Malik said something to him, probably like, you ain't going to do shit, if I had to imagine, something along those lines. And to me, it looked like Garrison was the one who was big mad, and Malik was just talking shit. I think Mezzi ran over to also talk shit. He didn't really seem like he was throwing fists or anything. Like, I didn't really understand why anyone except for Garrison was. I don't even think Garrison deserved an ejection. I thought it was just like a double tech and keep it moving.
Very quick triggered. I really also think that was kind of soft, in my opinion. Like, what was up with? I mean, in 4 ejections, like usually you see that with full out brawls that go and spill into the first, second row in the stands. And personally, I liked it. I mean, I liked seeing Malik and Chimezie kind of get into it. I think that we've seen a lot of. I don't know if you guys have, but I've seen a lot of comments that this team's too nice. And that's something I think that's been a topic of discussion with this team for a while. I think even back in 18-19 when the Kings had Willie and Shump and those guys, that was the biggest problem, was they're too nice. And last year you got to see a little bit of bite with Mo Harkless. Well, the Kings have some bite this year. And Chimezie Metu, we've seen him in Summer League throw a couple punches. Yeah, we've seen him throw a couple punches. And then also now we see Malik Monk, who, he definitely came up and slapped that ball away today and kind of poked at Garrison Matthews. But Garrison Matthews deserved it, in my opinion. But again, love to see it. Soft on the ejections, but I'd like to see some life out of the Kings.
Yeah, definitely soft. I was really surprised that Mezzi getting tossed made no sense to me. And even watching the replay, I don't even know if the replay caught everything. It was really weird one to me. And also Tari Eason getting ejected. I guess he left the bench and wasn't on the floor at the time. And that's automatic ejection. Yeah, probably going to get suspended for a game. But kind of interesting. I did like that the Kings clearly pissed off the Rockets, though. They were whooping their ass in that second half. Last thing before we get out of here. There's all this talk about All-Star, and I get why we're having this conversation rather than the one I'm going to force right now, because All-Star is getting close and voting's happening. Today is 3 times voting, not I'm sure by the time people listen to this, you got 9 minutes, people, and people in the live chat. 3 times voting if you vote right now for these All-Stars. But seriously, people should go and vote for De'Aaron and Domas to be in this All-Star game. That's not just me being on it. These 2 will be at the All-Star game. So for the sake of their own travel, and hopefully myself, but we'll see. But these guys deserve it. And the NBA made it a little bit more difficult this year. You can't vote on Twitter with a hashtag anymore, which I think is very understandable because it was it got abused a little bit last year. But you got to go on the NBA. Yes, blame Andrew Wiggins and whatever K-pop group.
BTS.
You got that quick. Yeah. But I think that definitely just go on the NBA app and that's the place to vote. But I think the biggest award that the Kings could win is I just think Mike Brown needs some very, very serious consideration for Coach of the Year. The way that we've seen him turn this team around has been ridiculous. And Domas deserves a lot of credit. Malik deserves a lot of credit. The complementary spacing of Harrison Barnes, Keegan Murray deserves credit. De'Aaron Fox locking in more defensively deserves credit, and the rest of the coaching staff as well. But like Mike Brown, head of the snake for sure, just deserves. He has such a strong candidacy for Coach of the Year, and we'll get more into that as the year goes along. I get why that conversation is more focused on All-Star right now, and there's other really strong candidates. Like I think Joe Mazzulla is going to be the other strongest one in my mind. They have, but they have a storyline attached to them as well with everything that happened with Ime Udoka throughout the course of the offseason. But I really hope Coach gets some consideration there. Very last thing here, overtime segment.
Let's do it.
Totally non-basketball related, right?
OT.
But I did this. Oh no, we've already had the black licorice conversation. I was gonna ask how you guys feel about black licorice, but
why is this your question? The fact
because I got black licorice the other day, and I think I still have like a couple in my bag.
Yeah, you
and
have a lot
I
in
know
your
that's
bag.
like a controversial thing.
Yeah.
So I was gonna ask, but we've already had this conversation.
Right, because you have a terrible taste in candy.
It's just the one gate. I don't even
Good
love
honey
that
and
candy.
hot tamales.
Anyways, hot tamales. Yes, I do love.
Specifically, just to troll us.
It was to troll.
Hot tamales and good and plenties. Put them in the fridge and was just like, oh yeah, I get to go home and eat my good and plenties. Fuck yeah.
I think that Keegan Murray would be fully on board
Keegan
with the
would
good
be
and
so
plenties,
hyped,
just
dog.
so we
Hot
know.
tamales, good and plenties, dots, big dots guy for sure.
Dots. Wow.
Just the wax candy. Yeah. The little
Snow
strawberries,
caps.
you know.
Snow caps.
Oh god.
Yeah. Okay. So I'll change this to the other overtime that we actually did on our recording that never saw the light of day.
Fun.
And we'll start with Frank here. Frank, best post game spot in Doko.
Well, you know our favorite. They should sponsor us. Is we love Flat Stick Pub. That is, we call it the Stick. Shout out that local guy and Zach.
I call it Flatty.
They call it the Stick. They're always like, let's go have some Friday night action at the Stick. So that's my favorite spot. But honestly, we haven't really gone. I mean, have you guys gone over to Punch Bowl at all? We haven't gone to Punch Bowl very much.
Yeah.
It's just, I think it's better at Flat Stick, man. It's just a better vibe. It's more wide open, spread out. It's also cheaper. So I don't know. But they're opening a new bar out here. I think in the next, hopefully, couple of months, hopefully second half of the season. There's one. It's like the
Tom's
watch house.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's what
like
my one.
Buffalo Wild Wings vibe.
Yeah, that's my.
Tom.
My one critique about this area, Doko, which is it's so great, and I've really enjoyed working here the past 4 or 5 years. They need more bars, like more spots for people to watch games. Like when the Kings, not if, when, not maybe not. We'll knock on wood. When the Kings do inevitably someday have a playoff game and they're on the road, you need to have a watch spot. And I don't know if the Kings have a clear watch spot at the moment. It'd be nice if they have one here in Doko, but love Flat Stick.
That's a good point. I think we love you. You, Frankie,
You're beautiful. There also is somebody in the chat saying, I've never seen someone purposely buy hot tamales.
Yeah.
We might have hot tamales are good too.
From
Boom.
dirt and rust.
Yo, chill. Flat Stick is definitely the go-to.
Yeah, I think it's a go-to.
My one
It's the
complaint
easiest.
about Flat Stick is like I don't love their drink selection.
Drink quality is like
I'm more of a
solid
cocktail
five.
guy.
Yeah.
And that just doesn't really exist there. They have their
Speakeasy's
pre-mixed.
good, though.
The speakeasy is good.
We've gone to Punch Bowl a couple times.
Punch Bowl's the one other go-to probably.
Yeah, Punch Bowl's okay. It's just like there's a lot of people there. Sometimes the bar we haven't had issues getting a drink at the bar, but there's just a lot of people in Punch Bowl, and there's not really like can't really chill.
They need more spots. Like I said, they need more
spots.
Yeah.
Definitely. Yard House is El Classico.
Yard House
you
is a
know?
classic.
You just kind of know what kind of time you're gonna have at Yard House.
Right. And
They
Yard
do
House
close,
does
yeah.
get closed
I think they
earlier,
close at
and
midnight.
they're usually pretty damn busy. And
Yeah.
if they are busy, it's like
Yeah, you got to sit at the bar.
Not
That's the only
happening.
time
Yeah.
Yard
yeah.
House.
Other places could be busy. You could still go get a drink and kind of hang out in the
I guess
general
50
area.
cents. You showed me 50 cents having an after party at
At
Tiger
apparently tonight.
He doesn't. Right. Yeah.
Frank said 50 Cent does not drink.
Does not.
Allegedly.
Yeah, my
Uh,
sister's
According to a leaked
brother-in-law-
source.
my brother-in-law read 50 Cent's book.
You know how that sounds.
Yeah.
Right.
He does not drink.
Yeah. So that's gonna do it, fellas.
do it.
Appreciate you hopping on, Frank.
Sorry to crash your party.
Going to the
No,
stick.
glad to be here. We had a little James Ham appearance earlier. Somebody, you guys know Blake a little bit, right? Blake,
Yes.
this
Apple.
dumbass, my best friend, made the joke the other day that if James is the hammer, that I'm the nail. And I hate the joke. It doesn't make any sense to me. Yeah, I don't know. People call him Hammer, James, right? That apparently it's not good. I wish I didn't just say that on a recording. I'm glad Frank does not have a mic. I hope y'all did not hear that one.
Does he still have a gold tooth? Who the hell are they talking about?
Who has a gold tooth? 50 Cent, probably.
50
It's got to be
Cent,
50
right,
Cent. We're all
right,
James
right,
Ham, gold
right.
tooth.
Don't know that.
All right. Well, that's going to do it. I really hate that I even just said that, but you know, it is on record now. So appreciate
Brady
everybody
Bear.
hopping in here. The plan is to do these post game for the home games for sure, a live stream. So appreciate people hopping in here. Definitely check out Return of the Roar with these two great fellas.
You'll be on next Thursday. We'll have Brendan and Matt George on Thursday at 10 a.m.
There we go. Might get a little sock cam going on. Maybe an ice skate cam. We're gonna see what we're gonna see what's happening there.
That would be great.
So definitely check out Return of the Roar.
Look at that nerd.
Oh, we got Matt George down on the court flipping us off like a true professional. Maybe if we stall long enough. No, not happening.
No.
Not worth it either. So
Not worth the coach appearance. Not gonna get that many extra views.
but thanks to everybody that listened. As always, it is available on YouTube as well for anybody listening on the audio side. And forgive any slight audio hiccups as I get used to a new setup here. But appreciate everybody listening. Definitely take a look at the Kings Herald for all the great work from the guys and gals there that I become good friends with and do a great job covering this team. Take a look at their Patreon to support local independent Kings coverage. And if you enjoy this episode of the Kings Pulse podcast, please subscribe, rate, and review. And you'll hear from us again next couple days.